we're going to try a little used device at TED, which is having more than one person talk at one time. So we're going to try a little panel about the issue of polling. Get some seats here. Sit down. Here we'll get seats. Mics and seats. Tony? Oh, he's doing mics over here. How many more do we need? Is that it? Okay. No, they need mics. Well, he'll come over and bring them in. Bring over some mics there.
Yes. Okay. Maybe I'll set it up.
Okay.
We'll have to get a mic. It's on.
I think you're live. I think you're live.
I'm on? Is this on? No.
Is Forrest on? I think you're on.
I don't think so.
I like the glasses,
1, 2,
Forrest.
3, 4.
Yeah, you're
Do you like them?
I like
Okay.
the glasses.
Thank you. Thank you. Fucking pollsters. Punks, I swear.
Bad timing.
Let me see.
False.
Yeah, stop the madness. You know, I've been covering the political campaign, and I don't know, Ariane. I think the government's doing a pretty good job overthrowing itself. Out there. Those guys are working hard. That is the silliest damn campaign I've ever covered. You said this about me. No, I didn't. Yeah. Okay, here it is, number 6. Join the partnership for a poll-free America and hang up on pollsters. They're wrecking the country. And I'm doing a segment on polling. Thank you, Ariana. That's lovely. Yeah, it's every year there's a certain kind of, I think serendipitously, there's a certain kind of theme that begins to emerge at TED. And this year I think the theme is convergence. And not just technological convergence, the convergence of our whole lives. You hear John Doerr talking and you hear Michael Milken talking, and we are looking for ways to break down the walls and to pull together and to move forward. And it's really exciting. And we're beginning to think globally. But I just want to give you one little bit of warning. The world is not all one completely. I mean, after this, just before this recent unpleasantness in Bosnia and in Kosovo, the Army Chief of Staff, Dennis Reimer, called some curmudgeonly journalists together and said, you know, we really hate each other. And is there any way that we could work together just a little better when we start off in this next war? And seemed like a good idea. And there was a guy named Joe Galloway, who was this crusty old guy who has covered every conflict that you can possibly imagine since early Vietnam. And he kind of leaned forward and he said, General, first, always lie to the French. I'm not sure what that means, but I mean, he was really convinced. The French are the cause. The other theme that we have here is numbers. I mean, we are just awash in numbers at this TED. And we got this wonderful book, which is numbers, statistics, polls, all sorts of things. And I think it's an indication of how we want things to come together, that we want to uncritically take these numbers when they're given to us and believe them. But the truth of the matter is, as Bran has told us and as Joel told us just today, these numbers are subject to all kinds of problems. They are subject to unintentional bias or intentional bias. As Ariana knows, they are subject to the weakness of the people who are doing the polling. They are subject to possibly asking the wrong question. They are subject to not being put into context. So we thought we would grill some of the folks who do this for a living. Nina and Tim Zagat, who put out this fabulous little book here. I get a small percentage if you buy any of this. And they poll people in order to find out which restaurants are good. They assume that the people have something interesting to say. And Jack Myers, you really poll people to find out where they're coming from, and you're focusing on the surveyor. So there's two different approaches, and we thought that we would learn a little something about this. So Tim, let me start with you. Are you wrecking the country?
Glad you asked him.
As far as I can tell, we're helping them eat well. Ricky said he was going to give us a great introduction today. Well, Art Buchwald, Ariana, and then you casting doubt on what we do. Seriously, there are two different ways of looking at what we do, Nina and I. One is we really do want to know what people think about restaurants and hotels and resorts and the other things we survey. And we are really subject to very legitimate criticism if we get it wrong, because every single person who reads our books knows there are 4 or 5 restaurants that each one of you know better than anybody who's ever written a book. And you can check the places, and you should check the places you know well to see whether we got it right or we didn't. And I think the ultimate test of whether we are doing the basic job that we're known for is the experience of each and every person that reads the book, and it's pretty easy for people to do that.
Am I right in saying that what you're doing is a very different thing than what Jack does?
Yes, I think it's substantially different, although the techniques may be similar. But there are 2 kinds of polling. There's another kind of polling which is equivalent to voting, and it's saying, let's honestly try to give people an opportunity to express themselves, and that's going on the internet now. And I think it's one of the most exciting things that has happened in political experience during this century, because for the first time, large numbers of people can express themselves, and if we get it organized right, it's going to be a very, very powerful weapon in the political process, and it's going to give people a sense of enfranchisement, which they have not had for a long time. If you go back, maybe I should stop now and let somebody else talk.
Let me just introduce Jack. If you don't know Jack Myers, Jack has been doing a lot of polling for a long time. He works with large media companies and works with advertisers and researches brands, and is responsible for most of my television programs being canceled.
Don't take it personally.
No, I don't.
Actually,
I long since gave that up.
Actually, there's a danger in looking to organize the internet and organize the actions of individuals and try to quantify it. And that's the danger of what we have now in media, where we're trying to create specific numbers out of individual experiences and individual activities. The Nielsen ratings being an example. We cancel shows because of Nielsen ratings. Well, everyone knows the Nielsen ratings are extremely flawed. If you set up a parallel...
When you say extremely flawed, what do you mean?
Well,
How bad are they?
If you set up a parallel sample of 5,000 or 10,000 homes that are identical in demographics, psychographics, and everything else, you'll be off by as much as 20–25%
I really
on an
feel better.
individual
Thank you.
program's ratings. Now, when you think that programs, what we've had in media especially is we still have an industrial age, mass marketing, mass media mentality where we're really looking at actions of individuals. We still have a system that was set up 100 years ago when we went into the industrial age, and it hasn't shifted to the internet environment or interactive television environment where you're communicating with the individual. And that's the challenge in research as we go forward, is to really, I call it sponge research, where you're constantly soaking in information and then you try to squeeze out some knowledge. And you never squeeze out the information you put in. You squeeze out a little knowledge, then you keep adding more and more knowledge. Look at how that information changes, and you begin to look at trends and shifts.
So it's a lot like brand.
Brand?
Brand, fiber, Metamucil.
Well, you know, I believe in brand, so every time I hear B-R-A-N, I put the D on it.
Answer what Ariana was raising. She is really suggesting that polls are being used as a kind of weapon.
Well, other than the fact that I disagreed with 90% of what Ariana said about polls, I really respected the way you said it, because it's incredibly powerful. And that's what we have in our political system, is we're respected more for how we say things than what we say, and that's what people are polling and judging.
What do you think?
About...
We're stuck with facing Ariana's question, which is that pollsters, certainly in political campaigns, are biased and are trying to accomplish an end, and therefore distort the process.
I think it's very hard in that process for the consumer, the public, to know exactly what's behind the kinds of questions that are being asked. What we do and what I really know about is so completely different, because what we do is give people a very predictable kind of experience. We have, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with our books and how they're put together.
Everybody familiar with it? Everybody know it? Yeah, they know it.
Good.
That's good.
But they're all based on thousands of people who go to various places and rate them based on their own experience for food, decor, service, and cost for restaurants, and for other criteria in other areas, so that people using the books know exactly what kind of information they're going to get, how the information is put together, and trust their reliability because they know exactly how it's done. And when they look at places that they're familiar with, they know that the information is given by people like them, and they say, gee, this is right on. It's very different from the political kind of polling,
You're not trying to
which
predict.
I know less about. What?
You're not trying to predict.
No.
But
Well,
there-
yes, we are. We're trying to predict for you what your experience will be when you go to a place. You'll know what other people who have gone to that place have thought on the basis of certain very clear criteria. And of course, then we make it lots of fun by putting in the quotes of people who have gone, and we encourage them to be pithy and witty about what they say.
There's a lot of parallels between what the Zagats do and what we do that's different from traditional political polling. What they're doing is gathering a tremendous amount of information and opinion, organizing it, putting it in context so that people can form their own judgments and make their own decisions. What they're doing is putting the vast majority of what they gather out into the marketplace for people to make their judgments. What we're doing that's similar is that we're gathering the same type of intelligence from any number of different sources, putting it together. The difference is that we don't put that out. We then create the context and feed specific. We then form the judgments and recommendations and strategies on a business-to-business basis for our clients. So we're taking a lot of the context that their readers are taking and organizing it.
Let me tell you something that puzzles me, because as I say, I cover the campaigns, and Ariana was absolutely right. We do our own polls at NBC, and the campaigns each do their own polls, and both in New Hampshire and in Michigan, Bush was feeling pretty good. In Michigan in particular, he was extremely confident that he had McCain in a stranglehold. And so, and we thought it looked like that too. And so the next, you sort of, it's affecting your coverage. It can't help but affect your coverage. And then the real poll comes back, which is the vote. And most people just who are on the air sort of take a beat and go, well, of course, I understand that. That makes perfect sense. Let me explain it to you. And you're doing it while you're wiping egg off your face. Now, why does that happen?
Well, I mean, first of all, there are two different purposes going on. One is the effort to predict what people are going to do, and if you're doing it right, it's going to come out pretty accurately. And when you do it wrong, you sit up here and you look like an ass. And your people got it wrong. I worked for NBC in 1964 predicting every race in the United States. And fortunately, we got it right most of the time then. I don't know why you got it wrong, but somebody didn't.
But it wasn't just this organization. It was the other organizations, and it was the campaigns.
I don't know why, because I wasn't working on it, but there is a lot of egg on everybody's faces when that happens, and Ariana can go and criticize people for that. But there's a fundamentally different issue, which is, do you want to predict what people are going to do, or are you going to want to let the political process, let people speak? And there's another kind of surveying, which is called voting, which is called organizing, which everybody here should be doing, which Ariana wants to do it in her way, and other people are going to want to do it in theirs. But it's fundamental to our society, and it has worked pretty well for all of the people, I think, in this room, maybe not for some of the people who are not in this room. And if you care about the people not in this room, you ought to be organizing around those subjects. But we have a vehicle in the internet which is incredibly powerful, and which is a new form of surveying, a new form of political speech, which has not existed since literally the days of the Constitution. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, said that less than 5% of adults could vote at the time of the United States Constitution. You basically had to be a landowner who paid his taxes, which meant you were a rich male landowner. But 90% of Americans lived in communities of less than 1,000 people, and they went to their Grange meeting, their church meeting, their town meeting, and they could speak in a meaningful way about the things that made a difference to them. Gradually, it's not that people are lacking interest in these subjects, and it's provable that people are deeply interested in these subjects. A whole series of things indicate that. But people have fundamentally lost the sense that they can speak. And all they've been given in exchange for that is an easier franchise and a vote which in many instances seems to be meaningless to people. At least they're not interested enough to vote.
Jack, what's wrong with this notion? What the Zagats are doing is polling people really to empower them, to give them a voice in saying what is good about a restaurant. And I know a lot of people who engage in your polls, and they feel good. They like to do it. They feel like they're going to affect what's in your book, and they feel like it's a group of people teaming together to do something. The alternative is that you're working for large organizations and you're trying to learn people's opinions and behaviors in order to manipulate them to the goals of the organization. Is that fair?
I hate the word manipulation, but propagandize. I think that the real challenge is...
So is that a yes?
The real challenge is that mass media have really disconnected people from that Grange meeting and from that ability to feel like they have a real role in the process. It's been a television advertising and the political dependence on the soundbite and the advertising has created an environment where your judgments are formed by what you're seeing on a small screen and what you choose as a newscaster to present to them and the sound bites you choose to give them. So they feel really disconnected from the actual process. What the internet is doing and what new media is doing is allowing the reconnection back into the process. And that's really the challenge, is for the candidates to move from this old media paradigm to the new media paradigm, communicate in a one-to-one way on issues that are relevant to the individual, and to make that connection. So that's where I think candidates have to move completely away from mass media and into the new personal media, and away from the disconnection into the connection.
I'd like to know a little bit about what you do and how you do it. When you put things in your book, quotes and comments, you have edited down a lot of things?
We might have as many as 30 or 40 pages of single-spaced comments, 60 to a page, and we end up with 4 or 5. And it's tough, but basically you see themes coming out. When you're describing a restaurant, there are only so many ways usually you can describe it. And what you're looking for is somebody who has expressed the theme particularly well in using the comment.
And you have things that you couldn't possibly put in the book, I guess.
That's right.
We have some things which we actually put on the website, which we call outtakes, the things that legally we couldn't put in the book. And I've asked them, I don't know whether they're going to put it up, but I've asked them to put up some of the things we couldn't
I don't know if we can
couldn't
read
print.
that.
Suffers from delusions of adequacy, also known as Ebola Cafe. Took a doggy bag home. The dog refused it. Staying on the theme of dogs, stay home and heat up a can of Alpo instead. We actually printed this one, and then we got so many nasty letters we took it out. If this place doesn't get you laid, nothing will. And
Got a lot of nasty letters from
Tim,
women.
which place was that?
Here,
you know, saves fuel bills. The heartburn will keep you warm all winter. We get, thank God, we get a lot of these, but we can't put them all in the books, but we do like to have them on the website without identification. But you know, one of the things that is really, we started this as a hobby, and we never really intended it to be a business. It just sort of grew. And one of the things about it, when we started selling books, we gave it away for 3 years. We just gave it more and more. And Nina, who's a responsible financial person in our family, there has to be one. And she said, this hobby is getting too expensive. And as a tax lawyer, she didn't like the fact we were doing it with after-tax money. And so she said,
and there's a lot of after-tax money now.
Yeah. Well, she said, you know, you've got to start selling it. And that's the way we really started selling it. And the first year we started selling, the deal is if you fill out a questionnaire, you get a free copy of the resulting book. And so we gave everybody their free copy, and we got 6 requests per person directly back to us to buy them. So we were making more money from the people who were filling out the questionnaires than we would have if we'd been selling them through bookstores. And so, when we started saying, why are you why are you doing that? And people would say things like, well, we said it was crowded and noisy, and you said it was crowded and noisy, and we really appreciated the fact you quoted us. Well, the fact is that 100 people said the place was crowded and noisy, because it was. And all 100 of them identified with the comment which we gave, which was synopsizing their point of view. So every time you do that, you create this sense, you really create a sense of community. And I think that in some ways, we didn't know it, but we were creating the first interactive business and didn't have any idea that we were doing it. We would have been much brighter if we had.
So basically, you invented the internet.
Oh, thank you.
And we started off by giving everything away for free, not a model not unlike what's going on now, and turned it into a profitable business. So it's not a bad way of getting started.
All right, now tell me what you're trying to accomplish in your business.
Well, if I may, can I give an example?
Yeah.
That if the Meridian people could put up question 5, I'd like to just poll the audience. If you could take your Meridian out and take a second, if you could boot up question 5. I'd like you to recall the commercials that you've seen today, a couple of them.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
If you didn't finish reading those, they're online, the whole lot of them. Under what? What is it? It's
Zagat.com, there's a section on unprintable quotes.
But you printed them.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay.
Without attribution.
Had you previously seen the EDS cat herding commercial on TV? Before you saw it today, had you previously seen it on TV?
You want them to vote.
I want you to vote yes or no. Put in 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for don't recall.
Wow.
It's pretty good.
Okay, the next question. Had you previously seen the E-Trade Money Up the Wazoo commercial on TV? 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for don't recall.
Now vote.
The E-Trade Money Up the Wazoo, and vote now. 58% no. Okay, now question 10, the last, or 7, the last question. Does your company or investments, if you're an investor, rely in any way on advertising revenues? Does your business rely in any way on advertising revenues? 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for don't know. Vote now. And survey says, I'm surprised it's so high no, because most businesses today have some reference, but those of you who voted yes, now the...
Jack, they lied about their income too.
Kept it low, on the low side. The E-Trade commercial, Money Up the Wazoo, has been all over network and cable television for the last 2 to 3 weeks. Both were spots in the Super Bowl, which had ubiquitous distribution, and the EDS cat herding commercial was proven to be so unsuccessful in creating unaided recall on the commercial itself. Aided recall was very high, but no one could connect it back to EDS. And my guess would be that you'd be about 50-50 wrong and right if I asked you which commercial was for which product. What I basically do, what my polling is all about, is to look at those kinds of issues and trends and to report back to clients who are in effect dependent on advertising revenues to say the system today is not working. It doesn't work anymore. We have to restructure, we have to rechange, and over a 20-year period, seeing how it's moving and where it's moving.
Wait, what you just said the system is not working?
The system of advertising today is not working anymore. It's a system built on eyeballs for dollars. And eyeballs, in a few weeks, about $12 billion will be spent over a 30-day period in the TV network upfront marketplace. It'll be spent basically on the number of eyeballs reached and how much money it costs to buy those eyeballs. without any reference to what John Doerr referred to earlier as the sustained partnership. It's totally the deal du jour.
So all that money that the dot-com spent at the Super Bowl and in other places, and we're seeing them all over the place, is wasted money?
Well, it's functional if the goal is to talk to the investment community and to say we have a network TV campaign that's going to drive traffic. But the best example, the best example is Outpost, which did a fabulous, who remembers the gerbils commercials where they were throwing gerbils at the target's fabulous campaign, created a set of expectations about the brand. People went to the outpost.com, found nothing related to that brand message, and now Outpost is struggling to find an identity in a
Do you have a notion where it should go?
It should go to sustained partnerships. It should go back in many ways to the early 50s when television was a sponsorship medium, and when we had the
So like the Kraft Theater.
Kraft Theater, the Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin, Colgate Hour, Dinah Shore singing the See the USA in your Chevrolet, and Lux Theater and things like. And Bonanza brought us color TV through. And Chevrolet paid for Bonanza and paid big premiums to be associated with it.
A few minutes left, and you want to ask some poll questions too, right?
That's right. We had a bunch of them that we were going to ask all at once, if we can have them put up.
One at a time.
Get your meridians
Okay.
now.
What is your gender, male, female?
Okay.
If you could allow me to come back to that point, because it's brands that you're associated with, it's not just talent and name with a show.
Okay.
We're going to come back
We're
to
gonna come back
these
after-
in a second.
What is your age? 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and above?
Clock?
Clock's on.
Moving. I wanted something to sound. You can see the clock on the bottom. You can only vote, your vote will be counted when the clock is black.
Good Lord. I didn't know there were so many of us.
What is your annual gross income?
See if they lie again.
And we did these before, you know.
I know,
Yeah,
but we
they're
need
gonna-
them for the purpose that we're doing this.
All right, the clock's rolling. You can vote.
How many times do you eat out per week?
Now we're getting into it.
Clock is
Now
moving.
The clock is moving. We can't have sound on that? I had asked them to put sound on.
Okay.
It's right on.
How much do you normally tip? Clock?
Is
Clock's
moving.
on.
Clock is moving.
What is your political
By the way, you're
affiliation?
pretty cheap compared to the people we normally survey.
That Russian taxi driver was right.
Clock is moving.
Political affiliation. Good. If you voted today, who would you prefer for president?
Where's the nun?
Yeah, left it out.
Not an option. You gotta vote.
You're not going to have that choice in the
Okay,
end.
the clock's on.
Clock is on.
Wow.
It's pretty interesting.
Wow.
That is interesting.
And what we're doing here now is going back and seeing on each of the original questions based on the demographics whether there are differences between men and women on their votes.
Could we see that again?
Can we see that again?
All right.
All right, can we turn the stage
Stage
lights
lights
down a
down.
little bit? It's extraordinary on
Look
some
at
of these,
Bush.
the difference, particularly on Bush. Could we stay up on that? For what it's worth, it's rather extraordinary, some of the discrepancies on Gore and particularly on Bush. Okay, the next one.
Okay.
10 seconds.
This is, Tim, why don't you explain it?
We're seeing this, frankly, we like to listen. That's our business. We like to find out what other people think. And this is the first time, frankly, we had no idea what you would say. We just thought it'd be interesting to see what you had to say. And you'd have to analyze this. But, it's rather interesting, obviously, between 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, there seems to be a quite different attitude about Bradley for some reason. Maybe it's the number of people voting, but there seems to be a big difference in those age groups on that.
What's the biggest trend I see?
Most of the rest are fairly.
15 seconds.
McCain seems to do better with the 40-year-olds than the 20-year-olds, substantially. Bradley does substantially worse, which surprises me. It'll be interesting to have those numbers and be able to study them.
This is information that we also collect on restaurants and have never put into our books, but we will on the website.
Next.
That you'll be able to see.
What? What's your head? So what?
There's one more question.
Next.
What's happening?
Gore doesn't do as well with the millionaires as he does with the, it's interesting, Bradley seems to be doing pretty well with millionaires as opposed to Gore. We'll put that together for you next time. Let's go on to the next slide just to see how it looks.
Have they done?
It's great stuff.
Next.
This is based upon how often you go out to eat.
See now, obviously Bradley and McCain are popular with fat people. And for some reason, poor people don't like Bush. I mean, look at that. 0. I guess if you don't eat out, you don't vote for Bush. I don't know what to say about that. Maybe Ariana could explain that. Could we have the next one?
How much you tip?
Oh,
this
this
is based on tipping.
based on your tipping. Big tippers like Gore.
You'd have thought that the big tippers would go with Bush. But they like McCain and Gore and Bradley. Next.
It's just not a Bush crowd, huh?
Next.
Oh, Richard says we should want.
We have one more. Sort of interesting.
It takes more time.
Huge, you'd have to study it, but there's huge differences, obviously.
One last question to
The
wrap
last
it up if we
question.
could.
And we
Jack,
have
you wanted
number
to
8.
talk
The
about
last
the
question.
biggest trend facing
There's one
this audience that you see.
Other than how much we
The
should
biggest
tip trend.
Would you want to go to that?
Yeah, it's important as we look at 15 seconds, branding, even though many people think it's an overused word, branding is the single most important trend in the association of business brands with media brands and the interconnection between the two. And as a last comment, Neil Postman, who's a brilliant professor of media ecology at NYU, says, information is a form of garbage, barely useful for providing coherent direction for the most simple tasks.
Okay.
So as we think of information, we always need to think, we're looking at garbage, how do we turn it into knowledge?
Okay, thank you.
You want?
Thank you.